So part two and part three of East of Eden, since we had our break last week. It comes to turn out that I don't know if the rest of you guys did the same thing, but I didn't read any last week, and then I played catch up this week. I don't know if the rest of you guys have done the same thing, or if you pasted
I was
books.
kind of along the same lines.
What is it, LeBron?
I was kind of along the same lines as well. I was busy.
Yeah,
Yep, yep, yep.
but even though I had to kind of bull rush it, it's still very much a pleasurable read. I forgot how good this book really is. Um, Lots of stuff has happened um, in this part. Of course, we get all the drama about Adam and Kate, and Kate has the boys, and as soon as she gives birth, she shoots Adam and runs off um, the whorehouse. Right. Um, we have all kinds of drama with the Hamiltons and that whole family dynamic, all the different children. Just remember, Steinbeck projects kind of trace his lineage a little bit.
Emily's
Um,
parents.
the Hamiltons are his mother's side of the family. He even kind of breaks the third wall a lot and talks about the Hamiltons in the first person. Talks about his mother and all his aunts and uncles. Samuel Hamilton's, of course, his grandfather. The Trasks are kind of the fictional family in the book. Um, I thought that was his father's side, and I was wrong. I think that's just a fictional family, but the Hamiltons are his mother's family, and of course now we also have drama with the two younger Trask brothers. There's a whole long chapter about how long it takes to name them. He waits to name them until they're like 2 years old or something, just because Adam is in such a stupor after what Kate does to him. And Cal was the name of one of them. Cal was kind of history's kind of repeating itself here, because Cal was kind of the dark, like he's kind of got more of an impulse towards the dark side of things, right? Whereas Aaron, just one A, Aaron is kind of the lighter side of things. So Steinbeck is kind of creating again a similar dynamic that Adam and Charles had in the first part of the book, and
Also have the same initials as Cain and Abel as well,
right,
along the same biblical. It punched me in the face so often while reading it that you can't not bring it up.
the Cain and Abel parallel. Um, yeah, I didn't think that they had both had the same first initial. That's interesting. Uh,
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool how Steinbeck decided to keep that same theme there. You know, Charles and Adam, um, and then the other two there, but having the same initials. That's just top notch. Just keep it going. You know.
right, and yeah, we get a lot of their play that they have, and how Cal always kind of bullies Aaron. Um, but Steinbeck talks about kind of how Cal is also kind of protective over Aaron as well, just because he knows that Aaron kind of has a soft heart. Um, and then, of course, we end today with the tragedy that happens in the Hamilton family with Tom and Desi. Right, Tom accidentally gives Desi salt when she has that stomach illness, and that ends up killing her. And then he feels guilty and pretty much ends up killing himself. Right, so that's how we end today. So lots of stuff happens. Also, Charles is dead now. Um, Adam finds out in a letter that Charles is dead. So Charles left half of his money to Adam and half of it to Kate. And well, Adam's kind of worrying, like, hey, Kate's going to use this money for evil if she gets it. So he could actually probably get away with not giving it to her pretty easily. Just say that she's dead, but his ethics just doesn't allow that to happen. And but at the same time, he doesn't want her to get the money still because of what the potential evil that she could do with it. And
I think Adam's dumb.
you think he's dumb? Yeah.
I'd have taken up. I'd have shot her. I'd have taken the money back. I'd have not. I'd have made completely different decisions than him though. But that's maybe I'm dumb. I don't know.
Yeah, that scene where Adam goes to her brothel and confronts her is one of the more interesting scenes in the book, I think. Um, and of course, we also get her story of how when she first goes to the brothel, how she pretty much kills the madam Faye. Um, she was doing some pretty wicked
Oh,
stuff, Faye, right? Yeah, she got Faye super drunk and then like was torturing her while she was sleeping. Um, so definitely a lot more on Kathy and her evil in this section of the book. But also we have the I'm kind of, again if we read so much, I'm just kind of summarize it all. But we also had that great chapter where they named the twins, and they were giving like this biblical interpretation of the Cain and Abel story in Genesis, and they spend so much time talking about this word timshul that means thou mayest, and depending on what translation of the Bible you have, um, it translates that differently. Um, and depending on what verb you use in that case, that can radically change the meaning of how you interpret that story. And Steinbeck, well, the Timshul thou mayest, it kind of takes this idea that we have free will, right? We can choose whether to um, become evil or good. Um, we can choose whether we want to reject sin or not. Whereas the other two interpretations, one of them kind of lends to like this Calvinist interpretation. Um, it's our destiny to reject sin, and yeah, that's a whole. That chapter is really the heart of the book. Um, it's where a lot of the themes of the book come together. Come together. Um, we should definitely take a look at that passage. But I've kind of read enough. So let me just ask you guys, how's your reading experience going? Um, what are you finding interesting about it as we keep going along?
So, um, like I said, I didn't do much reading last week and did some catch up this week, and I actually kept going. I'm almost done with the book now, just because of I just wanted to keep. I was sucked into what Kate was doing, how she was doing it, and everything. Um, did we? Is Lee's parents' story in this section, or is it in
Yeah,
the? Okay, I can't wait to talk about that. That was one of my. That's my favorite part of the book. Just that short story, how just terrible it is. Um, I don't know what to say. It was just
but yeah, about
performing a C-section that way was I wanted to see. I was with Lee whenever he was telling it, saying just tell it one more time like the right way, just how it should have ended. Do that for me so I can go to sleep better. And his dad saying no, I got to tell it the way it happened because that's the way it happened, and it would be like it's even a distasteful truth is better than a good lie or whatever it was. Oh my goodness.
yeah, that was a really powerful part of the book. It, that's one of the great instances of evil that is discussed in the book, right? When it talks about what those men do to her once they find out that she's a woman. They It's been so long since any of them have seen a woman that they pretty much um, gang rape her, right? Before then they have a then, like I said, they pretty much dig the baby out of her after all the violence that's imposed on her.
And they just walked by with their heads down because they forgot that they could act like that, as if it didn't happen. What? Uh,
Yeah, so Steinbeck is definitely again showing us the power of evil that evil has. Um, that's along with stuff that Kate's doing. That's one of the again. I agree, Ron. When I was reading it again, I was really moved by that passage as well. Um, just the power of evil. Um, how overwhelming evil can seem to be in our world sometimes. Like almost like if you started diving into philosophy, a lot of modern philosophers will even say um, the world is so evil and corrupt. What's the point of even living? Um, it kind of does feel that way sometimes, but Lee has definitely done his best to persevere despite everything that happened with his family.
so they just went without seeing a woman for so long that they decided that it was okay to act like that way for however long it took. Um, so is that him saying that? Is that Steinbeck's way of saying that time is the only thing that's keeping us normal human beings from being like Kathy or Kate? Like, do we just lose our conscience after a certain period of time?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Like there's always this sort of division between our animal impulses and our intellectual impulses. Right, this kind of goes all the way back to the Greek philosophers, even like Plato and Aristotle. Um, this is definitely a lot of a lot of philosophy kind of suggests that we are more animal than in an intellect sometime, and that's a case where Steinbeck's definitely kind of showing you um, our almost animalistic impulses, and sometimes reason and logic and law and order can't override our animal impulses. Um, but at the same time, I'm just kind of talking aloud here, Brian. But at the same time, there's this whole notion of free will in the book, again from Timshel, that we are
Oh, absolutely.
discussing. So those men could have chosen not to follow their animal instincts. They're not slaves to their animal impulses. I don't know. How would you answer your own question there, LeBron?
Um, I disagree with that. If that would be Steinbeck's way of saying it. Welcome back. Um, but I don't think that's what Steinbeck's saying. I kind of agree with what you said. That's just his way of showing how, it's something that may have happened. It's how bad humans can be, the depravity of the human nature in some instances. Um, but it was something that kind of crossed my mind while reading. Um, and then let's see. Lee has a conversation with Cal. Um, he has a conversation with Cal about. No, that's in part 4.
Part four. Yeah.
I'll wait on that.
Shane, what's your take on this part that we're talking about with Lee and Lee's talking about his what happened to his mother? Um, kind of like talking about good and evil and stuff.
Well,
Right.
you were talking about the free will, them talking about Timchel and all of that. And of course, you have the issue there when Desi had her illness and Tom gives her the salt. And that kills her. And for some reason, I'm reminded of Lot and his family, Lot and his wife, when, they were told if you turn back, you'll be turned into a pillar of salt. And then you look, I think it's in Matthew, when Jesus said that ye are the salt of the world or salt of the earth. We've got to keep her salt. And then you have all of the comparisons there with Charles and Adam and um, Cal and Aaron and all these biblical references here. And then you have, for some reason, it just completely um, slipped my mind. Um, my mind's not working the best right now. But what's her face? Help me out here.
Kathy.
Kathy, yes, thank you. Kathy, who's doing all of these sexual things and hanging out at the at the whorehouse, doing all these ungodly things, and she's creeping into their family, causing all of this evil and discord. And so, even with Lee's story there, all of that evil, and then as you was talking about the animal nature in us and that free will. So there's something that has to be present, whether if it's a balance of salt, to keep us well seasoned, to not have less salt, or we become out of control. We become rotten meat, in other words. Or if we have too much salt, it kills us. You see? So there has to be that control there, or else our animal nature comes out and we do completely out of control actions. such as what they did to Lee's mother there. So I think that is really it's taming, or in other words, keeping this animal nature in us or this flesh under subjection to a higher power. I hope that makes sense there. I tried to explain it as it come to my mind there. So, um, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it seems you're kind of suggesting without law and order, right? Without some, without law, order, maybe even the voice of God or religion. Um, that's what tames those animal impulses.
Right.
That seems to be what you're suggesting.
Was that Hume? Hume? Who was that? That that philosopher that wrote on the
Um,
law?
Hobbes.
Hobbes. That's right, Hobbes. I knew it started with an H, but yes, there's absolutely got to be some type of law and order in place to keep us from being a bunch of barbarians.
Rousseau was the opposite. He argued that we're in a state of nature, we're peaceful creatures.
But this even stems off of our conversation 2 weeks ago about original sin. And, the more I think of it, there is scripture to back up original sin. We are born with that sin and in need of a Savior to deliver us from that original sin. And if that's not, if you're not free from that, then it snowballs and then it just has outburst. So it's just my thoughts on it.
So, yeah, there's a lot of. I'm actually thinking about writing a paper myself about this. I might write a paper along with you guys. Um, but I'm actually thinking about writing a paper on the Thomas Aquinas themes that are happening in this part of the book. Um, Steinbeck's, to me, it seems like he's not showing that evil is unconquerable or anything like that. Um, he's actually, this part of the book to me actually kind of shows how we can choose to reject evil, um, just like how with the word timshel, right? We can't, we choose whether we want to reject it or not. And despite the power of evil, both in with what happens with Kate, as well as what happens with Lee's mother, despite the power of evil, um, there's still inherent goodness within us. Like one of the things that Adam tells Kate when he confronts her, Kate's trying to show him like the animal impulse. Kate feels sick at the animal impulses that's of some of these men who go into the brothel, right? It talks about how in the brothel next door is fairly respectable. Her brothels where they start doing all this like S&M stuff and all that. Um, but she's keeping pictures as blackmail for the politicians, and she does it just because she thinks that men or mankind in general is just rotten to the core. But Adam even tells her there. He says even with those men, you still don't see the good within them, right? Human beings are. We're talking. We're going to get dive into some metaphysics here, but human beings are were created by God, and God is good, right? So our natural state is, and I'm talking purely through the lens of Christian philosophy here, but our natural state is good before sin creeps in. But even if we are tarnished by sin. Our being is still good. Just the fact that we're even living, just just to exist, is good. And that's something that Kate's arguably not seeing here in this, with how she especially thinks that men are animals. Um,
So I'm having a little bit of trouble hitting my microphone in the right times. Uh, I wanted to kind of chime in here about go back about the so so Shane said the godlessness of what Kate is doing, hanging out at the whorehouse and running the whorehouse, killing Faye and taking over it and all that. Um, and then we made a comment about um, kind of like the free will. If I can argue for predestination for a moment, and I am in no way a Kathy sympathizer, but she, like he told us in early on, she was born off without a conscience. Um, so she was made that way as well. That was her being. You just said human beings were born good. Does that not mean that she was meant to, like she's following God's plan by acting this way, whether she believes it or not?
That's a good point, Bron. I mean, especially if you're pulling the that predestination, that Calvinist view there, that maybe she wasn't even chosen, so she has no hope of being saved from her unruly nature. Um, I mean, it. You could argue that case, especially considering how Steinbeck says she was born that way. So, yeah, I could certainly see that as well.
yeah, it depends. To answer
And
that, to answer that, Abron, it depends on if you think that Kate is naturally evil, or if she was created evil, or if she was made evil by circumstance. And maybe she has a natural inclination towards evil, but that doesn't mean that she is naturally evil. If that makes sense. Um, like an alcohol, like let's say you have to kind of add to kind of build this. Let's say your family has a tendency towards alcoholism. Let's say it runs in your blood and your genes. Your genes your genes would suggest that you too would likely be an alcoholic, right? That's a form of determinism, but you can still ch- choose to reject your genes in that way and not drink, and reject even what your genes are telling you to do. Um, yeah, I'm I'm just kind of
I
playing
think that
counter.
comes along. I'm following. I think that comes along a lot in part four, um, especially with that conversation with Lee later on. Um, so really, part four will blow all of what I just said out of the water. But I wanted to argue it for a moment. I want to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's a good argument. Like, is she just naturally evil? I think there's an argument to be made both ways. Um, both ways
I was
can.
talking about like the determinism, predestination versus free will argument. Um, I believe she was just off, right? Um, and really was allowed to go much further than she should have been. She should have been taken care of whenever. Samuel met her the first time.
But if I may, there's a very powerful few passage of scripture here, or not scripture, goodness gracious, but passages here in about a page or two in chapter 13.
Okay.
And it seems as if Steinbeck is really inserting his ideas here, I assume, to set the rest of the book. And it's 132 in my book, but it's like a page or two, and it starts at such a time it seems natural and good to me to ask myself these questions. What do I believe in? What must I fight for? And what must I fight against? And he says our species is the only creative species, and it has only one creative instrument, the individual mind and spirit of a man. Nothing was ever created by two men. There are no good collaborations, whether in music, in art, in poetry, in mathematics, in philosophy. Once the miracle of creation has taken place, the group can build and extend it. But the group never invents anything. The preciousness lies in the lonely mind of a man. And now the forces marshaled around the concept of the group have declared a war of extermination on that preciousness, the mind of man. By disparagement, by starvation, by repressions, forced direction, and the stunning hammer blows of conditioning, the free roving mind is being pursued, roped, blunted, drugged. It is a sad suicidal course our species seems to have taken. And this, I believe, that the free, exploring mind of the individual human is the most valuable thing in the world. And this I would fight for the freedom of the mind to take any direction it wishes, undirected. And this I must fight against any idea, religion, or government which limits or destroys the individual. This is what I am and what I am about. I can understand why a system built on a pattern must try to destroy the free mind, for that is one thing which can by inspection destroy such a system. Surely I can understand this, and I hate it, and I will fight against it to preserve the one thing that separates us from the uncreative beast. If the glory can be killed, we are lost. So Steinbeck is all for free will. And it seems here that he's not about mainstream ideologies or and it's almost an argument against established law and order in some ways, that the most powerful force in this world is our own individual mind. So whatever we choose in our free will, whether if that's to do good or whether to do bad, um, in some ways we should do it with all of our might, because that is the most powerful force according to Steinbeck here. And so I think those paragraphs there sets the stage um, uh, onward to how these characters act, because really they have their own personalities, their own little worlds in some way. So I thought that was an important section there to add to this argument, because I mean this right here is in Steinbeck's own words how he feels about free will and our individual mind there. So
Yeah, that is a very significant passage, Shane.
mm,
It's in sharp contrast to Steinbeck's thinking earlier whenever we were talking about the Greats of Wrath, right?
mm-hmm,
Because Greats of Wrath, he was about how the group consciousness is how social change can actually happen. It takes the group, the phalanx.
Mhm.
If you go back and look at that argument of phalanx that I posted for you on Moodle, that unpublished document, he actually talks about. He thinks that it's the group. Early in his career, he thinks it's the group that accomplishes change. But by the time he's writing East of Eden, he's changed his mind. He thinks that it's the nothing great has ever came out of group collaboration. It's the individual lonely mind, um, where greatness comes from, whether in
Mm.
art and music and philosophy, um, the free exploring mind, right?
Mhm.
I think he's right. Like that passage, I've always thought he was right about that. How often do you hear of it? Often it is whenever you think about something creative, it usually is the collaborations usually don't work, right? Often when it comes from one creator, that's usually when you have a good piece of art. Anytime you start getting a lot of people's hands tied up into it, whether it's book or whether it's a painting or something like that, music, uh, it tends to lose it tends to lose something when more than one hand gets in the pot.
Right, and it seems like when you have a group, one person pulls all the weight anyway. You have one mastermind and then like two or three assistants that just pull off of that one person there. So, I mean, really, this is diving into um, that type of philosophy that says all the power you need is in you, is within you. Reach inside of you and pull it out. Who was that? Was that Russo?
Say that thought again.
The power within it, all the power you need is in you. It's in your own mind. You have what it takes. You know.
That sounds like a Nietzsche argument.
Uh,
Disney?
What'd you say, Brian?
Disney? Walt Disney?
Was that who had that quote?
No, but that's what came to mind whenever he said that. I don't know. I have no idea about the philosophers. I can't remember quotes like that. I admire those that do, though.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't have you in our group last semester, Brian. We had a good time. Philosophy class.
I don't remember whose philosophy class I took.
Probably Sean.
I think probably, yeah. It was dry.
Yeah, I'm really glad you pointed us to that passage, Shane, because that's one of the great passages of the book. Um, I have 2 pages of notes here. Let's see. There's a couple of passages I asked to as well. Let's see.
that's right. I don't know why I was thinking Russo, but yeah, the will to power is a Nietzsche um, idea.
Steinbeck did read Nietzsche. He had thus spoke Zarathustra on his bookshelf.
Mm.
Anytime you're doing Steinbeck studies, um, like I'll show you guys this real quick. But yeah, maybe you're asking yourself, who might have influenced Steinbeck? Um, there's a book called Steinbeck's Reading where where they actually traced every book Steinbeck had, and you can kind of see what might have been on a shelf. So yeah, here he is, Friedrich Nietzsche, thus spoke Zarathustra, and it gives a quote. It said from a letter. Oh, I've read a hell of a lot of Nietzsche.
So,
So
so it very well must have been that influence from him that contributed to those passages.
yeah, I think you're on to something there.
Mhm. I mean, Steinbeck was well read in philosophy and in the Bible. I mean, it shows how he ties it all in together. I mean, it truly is something.
Let's see if he had any Aristotle on a shelf. Yeah, he sure did. Yeah, Aristotle built a world and we are building one. His was a true world and ours is, and the two need not meet and quarrel.
I noticed that said Blake too. What did he have from Blake?
William Blake.
Uh,
He had a book of his poetry, it looks like.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember he quoted Blake in Grapes of Wrath, if you remember, when Jim Casey is giving that funeral for Grandpa Jode. He quotes Blake right there. Yeah, there's not too many authors you have a project like this for, but you can trace every book Steinbeck ever, at least the ones that he owned. There's a whole evidence that he would have read something, like maybe in his letters or something. This was a pretty ambitious project. Um, it's on the Steinbeck Center for Steinbeck Studies website. You can access that. It's unfortunately not in print now. My old advisor is who actually wrote that book, and he doesn't even own a copy. He said he was trying to get a copy recently, and somebody was going to charge him like $500 for it. So he doesn't even have a copy of his own book.
Of his own book. What the?
Yeah, just the digital version. Um, Give me just a second. Yeah, I'm looking. The passage I wanted to point you guys to is in chapter 22, and it's right before part 3 starts. Let's see. This is when Lee and Mr. Lee and Mr. Hamilton and Adam are all having a conversation, and this is right after the tinsel. Um, no, tinsel's a few pages later, but it's a page or two right before chapter 23 starts. If you guys are following along in your own book, this kind of adds on to the conversation we've been having. Paragraph starts. Um, Lee said, "Remember, Mr. Hamilton, I told you I was trying to translate some old Chinese poetry into English? No, don't worry, I won't read it. Doing it, I found some of the old things as fresh and clear as the morning, and I wondered why. Of course, people are interested only in themselves. The story is not about the hearer, he will not listen. And I here make a rule: a great and lasting story is about everyone, or it will not last. The strange and foreign is not interesting, only the deeply personal and familiar. Samuel said, apply that to the Cain Abel story. Adam said, I didn't kill my brother. Suddenly he stopped and his mind went reeling back in time. I think I can, Lee answered Samuel. I think this is the best known story in the world because it is everybody's story. I think it is the symbol story of the human soul. I'm feeling my way now. Don't jump on me if I'm not clear. The greatest terror a child can have is that he is not loved, and rejection is the hell he fears. I think everyone in the world, to a large or small extent, has felt rejection, and with rejection comes anger, and with anger, some kind of crime and revenge for the rejection, and with the crime, guilt. And there's the story of mankind. I think that if rejection could be amputated, the human would not be what he is. Maybe there would be fewer crazy people. I'm sure in myself there would not be many jails. It is all there to start at the beginning. One child refused the love he craves, kicks the cat, and hides his secret guilt. And another steals so that money will make him loved. And a third conquers the world and always the guilt and revenge and more guilt. The human is the only guilty animal. Now wait, therefore I think this old and terrible story is important because it is a chart of the soul, the secret, rejected, guilty soul. Mr. Trask, you said you did not kill your brother, and then you remembered something. I don't want to know what it was, but it was very far apart from Cain and Abel. What do you think about Oriental patter, Mr. Hamilton? You know I'm no more Oriental than you are. So, yeah, that passage, that's another passage that kind of traces this notion of good and evil, right? Evil, Steinbeck's evil, at least the other passage came straight from Steinbeck's mouth. This one's coming from Lee, but it's kind of suggesting how evil springs about in the world is from love that isn't reciprocated. That's how love. That's how evil is emerges in the world. That's another thesis the book poses. Um, Evil comes from misplaced love. That's if you want a philosopher for that, that's straight up Augustine, right? Augustine kind of came up with that argument back in the Middle Ages that evil comes from a perverted form of love, and not perverted in a sexual. It could be, but perverted in general. Um, what do you guys think of that argument? How do you see Kate um, or even Lee's story based on that passage I just read? Even in general, do you think that's how evil emerges in the world? That it's from misplaced love, or do you think evil is just something that exists on its own? Like Kate's pure evil, you could say.
I kind of, it's like you kind of can go both ways, but I feel like one side always dominates the other, and I think it's just like I think evil just existed because I don't think, how can I put this in words? I feel like she had to go through something to get to where she is now, which is encouraging her to be in her ways, but at the same time, where did that evil spirit come from? Like what realm did it diminish from to come onto her to give her that experience she went through, if you get what I'm saying. I'm not sure if you're picking up on what I'm saying, but that's what I'm trying to say.
So, are you suggesting then that um, she was made evil by her circumstances rather than being just pure born evil?
Yeah, I can say that because unlike it, I mean, even though it's sad to say, but everything has a purpose. And, some people's purpose aren't uh, the same as others. Like, the way they were designed by, the creator it had a design purpose to be that way for a reason. I mean, you can kind of say the same thing about, when young people die. It's like, okay, why they had to die so early? What was the purpose of that? In reality, they served their purpose already, and it was just their time. So I kind of use that analogy to tie back to this. Everything has a purpose. Even it may be good or bad, you just never know. But yeah,
Kind of going back to that predestination we were talking about. Um, I'm going to go ahead and agree. Uh, Evil just kind of exists, but it can be brought about more from misplaced love.
So you're saying that's just one way it can emerge, not the only way, but one way.
Right.
What do you think about this, Shane?
I think that evil in some ways is love perverted. If you look at I usually don't use this translation, but I think that it translates it in a way that adds to the argument. But if Proverbs 6:14, and it's the New Living Translation, said their perverted hearts plot evil, and they constantly stir up trouble. So I mean, and that's what love perverted does. When discrepancies creep in, and that animal nature rises up, then trouble will be stirred up as a result of that. So I can see it that way for sure.
yeah, I
Uh,
agree with Shane on that one.
so I think that going back to the free will there, that if we allow those things to creep in, there's consequences to what we allowed to creep into our lives. Because if we choose to love, then we'll reap the fruit of love. If we choose to allow the things of this world to harden our hearts, then from that hardened heart or that cold heart, we'll reap the fruit of that bitterness, which is love perverted there. And then that's where evil comes. It's the result. Even with Adam and Eve in the garden, they were commanded to not eat of the tree. And then out of allowing the serpent to deceive them, see, they allowed it, but I mean, really, it had to happen. Okay, it had to happen, but they allowed it to happen, and then it resulted in those terrible consequences. And from that time onward, we have evil. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely seeming to suggest that that's how evil emerges out of love misguided.
Right, and like disobedience to morals and order. If you rebel against that, there's consequences, and evil happens. So it's rebellion, I guess you could say, rebellion against love, rebellion against order results in those unwanted consequences there.
Yeah, if you guys remember from the opening of the story, um, Kate Kate did have a fairly uneventful childhood until she started trying to rebel And that's when her father beat her, right? Um, but even at that early age, if you remember from part one, she was already showing some signs of evil, but only after she was really severely mistreated by her father did she turn into the psychopathic killer that she is. Um, Again, I think you can make the case either way with her. She's such an interesting character study. Close to the end of the reading for today, um, when Adam goes to visit her, um, it's in chapter 31. This is when she's making all these threats. But I'm looking at it's in chapter 31, right before section 2 of the chapter starts. It says, "Our mouse is a philosopher," she said, "but our mouse is no better at that than he is at other things. Did you ever hear of hallucinations? There are things I can't see. Don't you think it's possible that they are dreams manufactured in your own sick mind?" "No, I don't," said Adam. "No, I don't. And I don't think you do either." He turned and went out and closed the door behind them. Kate sat down and stared at the closed door. She was not aware that her fist beat softly on the white oilcloth. But she did know that the square white door was distorted by tears and that her body shook with something that felt like rage and also felt like sorrow. So there's one very small passage that suggests that she might actually feel some type of emotion, that she's not just a cold, calculating snake. Um, but even at the same time, he says it feels like sorrow. He doesn't say it is sorrow. He says it feels like sorrow. So even then, the simile wording instead of the metaphor wording suggests even still maybe not. Such a beautifully written character here. It doesn't. We were left unclear. I don't know if you guys picked up on that small detail from part one. We were left wondering what happened to that teacher. It said that Kate's teacher disappeared. She admits in this section of the book that she killed the teacher. She did it. That she talked them into killing themselves. She actually does confess it. I don't know if you guys caught that detail. Remember, that's something we talked about in part one. What happened to that teacher? Yes, it was her who did it to him.
I don't remember the teacher.
Yeah, there was they pretty much drove this teacher out of town or whatever, and it was her. There was a suggestion that she might have that she was playing with him like a toy, right?
I remember her confessing, but I don't remember him that in the story earlier on.
I would have to go back and look, but there was a really subtle mention really early. Um, when I read that part again, I thought it's the same question. We're on like, what teacher? But then I kind of remembered.
You know what she reminds me of? Kathy. She reminds me of Jezebel because she is um, a sexual woman and she's in some ways controlling with evil intent. So here we go again, another biblical comparison.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. It just completely lets that evil run free, just like how Jezebel did in Kings, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this book will definitely test your biblical knowledge. That's for sure. If I had never read the Bible before and I read this book, I would probably be overwhelmed. Let's see. We might as well, since we're here, we might as well take a quick look at chapter 24 too, and that key passage that we alluded to earlier in the class, the Timshel passage. We definitely need to spend some time on it because it's going to come up again in part 4. Let me try to find where it is. It's about a page before section 3 of chapter 24 starts. It says, after 2 years, we felt that we could approach your 16 verses of the 4th chapter of Genesis. My old gentleman felt that these words were very important too. Thou shalt and do thou. We should hold on. We should probably let's do this. I'm gonna get my Bible off the bookcase, and we will look at that passage. Hold on, just a second. Okay. Genesis chapter 6. Let's read it since it's so important to our understanding of this. So it says, now it came to pass that man began to, let's see. Yeah, this is right. Fourth chapter of Genesis, not chapter 6, Genesis chapter 4, my bad. Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man through God. And she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a shepherd of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Now in the process of time, Cain brought a sacrifice to the Lord from the fruits of the ground. Abel also brought a sacrifice from the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. The Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his sacrifices. So Cain was extremely sorrowful, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you extremely sorrowful? Why is your countenance fallen? Did you not sin, even though you brought it rightly, but did not divide it rightly? Be still, his recourse shall be to you. You shall rule over him. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. And God said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He replied, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Thus God said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. You till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You'll be groaning and trembling on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my guilt is too great to be forgiven. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be groaning and trembling on the earth. Then it will happen, if anyone finds me, he will kill me. But it looks like this translation that I have
I had used that in one of my
in your response.
Like he in my presentation, like towards the end, because they used that in like chapter 51. I was just flipping around in the book, and I saw it.
What translation do you use, Dr. Yeager?
Um, I have a couple of Bibles in my house. This one is the Eastern Orthodox translation.
Oh, okay. I was trying to find it on here, but I couldn't get it figured out. I even tried the New Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition, and it still wasn't lining up. So it's the what now? The Orthodox?
Yeah, I have a Catholic, Orthodox, and a King James in here.
Oh, okay.
What's the New Revised Standard Version? Read those first 7 lines of that?
Let me see. The New Revised Standard. So you want the New Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition or the updated edition?
The Catholic, and then we'll read the King James after that.
Okay, so the Catholic edition in verse 1 says, And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof, and the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And you said 7 verses. Is that what you want me to read to?
So the Catholic version, then it's interesting because that version has the translation "shall."
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Steinbeck's so concerned with. The "shall."
Yep.
So that's suggesting that that's our fate. We shall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what this version has too. What about I'll Google it. King James Genesis 4. Here we go. Just looking at that 7th verse. Yeah, the King James has the word shall too. It's interesting that we read a Catholic, we read an Orthodox, and we read the King James, and every one of them says shall.
I wonder what the Message version says.
Oh gosh. Oh Lord. Now I gotta find out.
Oh, this is interesting.
So verse 6 and 7, God said to Cain, Why this tantrum? Why the sulking? If you do well, won't you be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin is lying in wait for you, ready to pounce. It's out to get you. You've got to master it.
I missed it. What version was that?
The Message version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Verse 1 is pretty interesting too.
Adam slept with Eve, his wife. She conceived and said Cain. She said, I've gotten a man with God's help. Yeah, Shane and I had a conversation about this in linguistics class last summer, but different translations of the Bible. This Message version is always a trip to compare it.
I have to read verse 9 and I'll quit. God said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" He said, "How should I know? Am I his babysit?"
I guess his brother's keeper is not clear enough. We have to make it very vivid there. To go, so let's to go now that we've looked at that. Let's go back to Steinbeck. It says after 2 years, we felt that we could approach our 16 verses of the fourth chapter of Genesis. My old gentleman felt that these words were important too. Thou shalt and do thou. This was the goal from our mining. Thou mayest rule over sin. The old gentleman smiled and nodded and felt the years were well spent. It brought them out of their Chinese shells too, and right now they're studying Greek. And then Samuel said, "It's a fantastic story, and I've tried to follow, and maybe I've missed somewhere. Why is this word so important?" Lee's hand shook as he filled the delicate cups. He drank his down in one gulp. "What you see, the American Standard Translation orders men to triumph over sin, and you can call sin ignorance. The King James translation makes a promise in thou shalt, meaning that men will surely triumph over sin. But the Hebrew word, the word timshul, thou mayest, that gives a choice. It might be the most important word in the world. That says the way is open. That throws it right back on a man. For thou mayest, it is also true that thou mayest not. Don't you see? Yes, I see, I do see, but you do not believe that is divine law. Why do you feel its importance? "Ah," said Leaky, "I've wanted to tell you this for a long time. I even anticipated your questions, and I'm well prepared. Any writing which has influenced the thinking and the lives of innumerable people is important. Now, there are many millions in their sects and churches who feel the order, do thou, and throw their weight into obedience. There are millions more who feel predestination and thou shalt. Nothing they may do can interfere with what will be. If thou mayest, why, that makes a man great. That gives him stature with the gods. For in his weakness and his filth and the murder of his brother, he has still the great choice. He can choose his course and fight it through and win." And Adam says, "Do you believe that?" "Yes, I do. It is easy out of laziness, out of weakness, to throw oneself into the lap of deity, saying, 'I could help it, the way was set.' Think of the glory of the choice. That makes a man a man. A cat has no choice. A bee must make honey. There's no godliness there. And do you know those old gentlemen who are sliding gently down to death are too interested to die now?" So, yeah, Steinbeck, even though all those versions of the Bible we read, the translation said, "Thou shalt." If you go back and read the original Hebrew, if you have an understanding of Hebrew, um, it actually says "thou mayest" instead of "thou shalt." So that's a mistranslation that has happened over the centuries. It's happened to the point where we looked at every major sect of Christianity just now. We looked at King James Protestant, we looked at the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox. Every one of them say "shout." Um, but the
In
original,
non-denominational, the
right,
Message Bible.
the Message Bibles, uh, that's something else entirely. That's just off the charts. So it's an interesting thought, and how that one word changes how you think about that theologically, and again, it will be a key to unpacking the rest of the book. So I will be interested to, especially next week, I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. I'm sure that'll be a major part of your presentation, Kelvin. Um,
Yeah, I got a good bit on my first half, but that quote you said earlier, well, not the quote, but what you transcribed from the book earlier, with Adam asking kid what is where his brother at. I have that in my in one of my key passages in my presentation. Like I kind of jumped ahead because I already knew that one off the rip because I already did some extensive research and I had liked it, so I was like, I'm gonna put that in there.
Good. Yeah. Whenever you present, I would say just focus mostly on part 4, but you can also kind of relate part 4 to the whole book too.
Okay.
Yeah. So
When Shane and them leave, can I show you it real quick?
sure. Well, guys, I think we pretty much hit on everything that I wanted to discuss. Is there anything that any other topics that maybe I didn't hone in on that you had on your mind? Yeah, I think we hit on some pretty deep stuff. LeBron, was you going to say something?
I was just saying nothing specific comes to mind. I think the main thing I wanted to talk about was Lee's parents' scene. So we got
I do want to speak for a moment on research. So it's coming to the point of the semester where we really need to start thinking about it. And I would tell you guys, we still got one more book left to read, The Winter of Our Discontent. But as far as reading it in time for you to do a good job with your research papers, I don't know if we have enough time left in the course to do that. Um, it'll be fun to talk about it, but I don't know how much, if you'd be able to write your research papers on it, just in the amount of time it is till we had about 4 weeks left in the class. 2 of the weeks will be reading Winter of Their Discontent. So probably right now is the time to start thinking about what you might want to do your research paper on. And it could be about any of the books that we have read. So you can do To God Unknown, Mice and Men, Grapes of Wrath, Cannery Row, East of Eden. So with between those, there should be no shortage of available topics that you might run with. So I would suggest maybe trying over the next. It's not an immediate priority, but over the next week or two, really start thinking about. Okay, I really found this topic interesting. This is what I'm going to do my paper on because we're getting ready to come up on that. As far as research goes, well, I got plenty of time. Let's take a look. Share my screen for you. Here we are. Oh, it's under library resources. I'm happy. I had drew a blank. I was like, where the heck is the library? My brain's not functioning well today either. But under library resources on, let's see, I don't know if I'm properly sharing my screen or not. Okay, I am now. Under library resources, you want to click A to Z databases. Just click academic search complete. You would enter your information. And then once you get to this screen, you want to make sure you go up to the top and click choose database. You definitely also want to search the MLA International Bibliography, probably the Literary Reference Center ebooks as well. Couldn't hurt. Just I would say select them all. Can't hurt. Um, and of course, this is the main database that we have access to through Bluefield State. Let's just say east of Eden, Steinbeck. I actually won't click choose database, select all. I'll just pick academic and MLA. So you can kind of pull up some articles that people have written, and you can start kind of doing your research. Here's an article called Kathy's Masculinity and Survival in Steinbeck's East of Eden. Steinbeck's perspectives on capitalism. What was you going to say, Brian?
It's not showing for me. I can't see it. I'm not sure what you're showing.
Okay, here we are, Vietnam.
There you go.
Yeah, you see all these results that I pulled up. The thing is, when let's say you wanted to read John Steinbeck and the Missing Comets in East of Eden, how Steinbeck found a Hebrew word but muddled some vowels. Let's say you wanted to read East of Eden is a morals paradigm for sons. But usually it'll come up over here with a PDF full text. If this is a case where it doesn't, it gives us some links. If it doesn't come, if you have an article that comes up but it doesn't give you the PDF, what you can do, go back to the MyBSU. Under library resources, you can click interlibrary loan article request. You can kind of start filling in your information, and then find, like, this is the name of the article. Barbara Hevelin is the author of the article. You can type all this stuff in here, and David McMillan over at the library will get it for you. So that's one resource that you have if you want to start kind of digging around and seeing what all is out there on your book. Remember that Liza has also made a LibGuide. So if we want to go back to our Google Moodle page, he has a whole research guide here that makes everything kind of like a one-stop shop. So you see the books that we have in the library about Steinbeck, journal articles. She points you to where to look for journal articles. I just now told you MLA and Academic Complete. She points you to several of the great the libraries across the country, like the libraries that have housed the most Steinbeck material. You got San Jose State, Ball State in Ohio, You have Stanford in California, they have a lot, and UVA has a lot. She gives you some links here. Um, I also have a large collection of stuff. So whenever you guys start getting really heavy into your research, I have a whole Steinbeck library in my office right now. I've got just about every book ever written on them. I have every journal article ever written from Steinbeck Quarterly and Steinbeck Review going back to 1970. I got everything in there. So if you guys, sometime over the next week or two, if you guys just want to come into my office one day and look around, I'll lend you stuff, and or you can go downstairs and make a copy of something you find. But my office is probably the best place you can go to do Steinbeck research, just because I've got so much stuff in there right now. Um, yeah, I've got books and articles galore in there. So if you come and look through some of that stuff, it'd be kind of trial and error in some ways. Maybe like, let's say you find an article on Academic Search Complete, but you can't find it. But you can't find it right away. I probably have it. Okay, so you can just come to my office and I'll give it to you. There's also JSTOR. I should probably mention JSTOR as well. We don't have access to JSTOR through Bluefield State. I keep telling them they need to, but apparently it costs a lot of money to subscribe to. But you can Google it, and I think as long as you create an account on here, like you can read some Steinbeck review stuff on here. But I think as long as you create an account on here, you can read up to like 100 articles a month online. So you just kind of got to register for an account. Maybe you can use your Gmail or something. But you can pull stuff up on JSTOR. You just kind of got to create an account to do so. And if you find something on here, maybe you can't pull it up right away, just send me an email and I can get it for you, because I still have access to JSTOR through WVU still. So those are places that you look around for stuff. But the key right now is to start thinking about what you might want to do as a topic. And you really kind of want to, I'd say maybe wait till next week till we finish East of Eden. But after next week, especially, I think is when you really start to want to get ironed down your topic. God, we've talked about so much stuff in here. Like, where do you even start? But maybe you can go back to some of those responses that you've done. Maybe something you found interesting in one of the books. The key is you just gotta look at one of these works from a certain literary lens, right? So like you guys know, like I have a very much a philosophical and historical kind of mind when I read books. Probably shows up in my teaching. But maybe you want to do like an environmental ecological study of one of the novels, or a feminist approach to one of the novels. Like it would be interesting to read Kathy from a feminist approach. Um, race studies, right? Um, we did, yeah, we haven't talked a lot about that with East of Eden so far, but Lee's character in itself is kind of a interesting character to talk about from that lens. How he uses the garbled Chinese when he talks to people. but he can actually speak really well. He just acts like he can't speak English because that's what people expect of him. Like you could do a race study of one of the books, um, a historical study of one of the books. So the possibilities are vast as far as what you might want to do, and I would say as soon as you get an idea brewing in your head, don't hesitate to email me and ask me some advice, and I'll tell you whether or not I think that's a viable idea or not. But there's plenty. I think I've preached to you guys all semester when it comes to Steinbeck studies. There's a lot of unpaved ground, a lot of stuff that needs to be said that hasn't been said yet. So there's no reason why you guys can't come up with an argument that nobody else has ever come up with before, as far as that goes. So, but now is the time to really start thinking what you might want to do. Um, the first step will be writing a bibliography or a proposal where you pitch your topic and then a bibliography to go with it. That'll be due several weeks from now. But then you'll, of course, write the paper after that. So the sooner you can start thinking and doing some research, uh, the better, the smoother the end of the semester will go, I would say. What do you got? What questions, comments, concerns do you guys have about this so far? Do you even have maybe even a thought in mind for what you might want to write about?
Nah, I don't got none right now. I'm pretty sure over the weekend something will come up.
I'm going to have to put some good thought into it, that's for sure.
I was still thinking about the biblical plagues aspects in Cannery Row.
What about Cannery Row again?
Like the biblical plagues or any more biblical references throughout the story.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think you should run with that.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be something as broad as good and evil and east of Eden, right? It can be something really narrow. Um, Usually, when you do research, it's a good idea to start broad and then narrow in. Um, like, I'm interested in this question of good and evil and east of Eden, or I'm interested in, um, I don't know, thinking about Grapes of Wrath. I'm interested in Jim Casey's ideas in Grapes of Wrath, or I'm interested in doing a feminist study of John Steinbeck's women, right? You kind of want to start big and then go small as you keep narrowing it down. So I would give you guys that advice. Start thinking big, then go smaller the further you go. Um, we've had some great conversations in here this semester, so I think all of you guys will be able to come up with a topic pretty easily. Think about that critical theory class that you took with Mike Smith, and some of the stuff you learned in there you can apply to this class, right? These different literary theories and stuff, you can apply those to Steinbeck. Um, you could do a post-colonial reading, right, or a new historicist reading, or feminist reading, right? All that stuff you talked about within his class, you can relate it to mine. But that's the class where you learn the theory. This is the class where you apply the theory, right?
There could probably be some Freud involved with it too. Psychoanalysis.
Psychoanalysis, right? Yeah, you can psychoanalyze one of the characters in the book, in one of these books, perhaps. So, yeah, I don't know if we would go back as far as like structuralism and all that. I don't know if any of that would be relevant, but a lot of the literary theories in the 1970s on you can apply to Steinbeck. I hate all that stuff. Structuralism, post-structuralism. I'm probably giving you guys flashbacks from your critical theory class. Saussure and all that stuff.
Absolutely terrible.
Derrida. I don't know if you read any Derrida in there. So, yeah, I just wanted to go on that little sermon. It's time to start thinking about it. And unfortunately, winter of our discontent, unless you work really fast late in the semester, you probably might not have enough time to write about it. If you want to read it early, go for it, I'd say. That could be a possibility for you. Or you're welcome to read any of Steinbeck's other works that we didn't cover if you want to write about one of those. There's lots of good ones we didn't do. We didn't do The Pearl. We didn't do The Moon is Down, Indubious Battle. Um, Travels with Charlie is one of his famous works. I didn't do that one in here just because it's not fiction, it's nonfiction. Burning Bright is one of Steinbeck's works that often gets hated on by feminist critics, because at that point he went through his second divorce. And he was really starting to be kind of misogynistic. But I'm guessing you probably don't want to go that nuts. You probably want to keep it to whatever you want to, whatever we studied in here. Even though these are his most famous works we've read, there's plenty of stuff to be offered on it. Like I told you guys, I'm going to write a paper on, from teaching this class, I'm going to write a paper on East of Eden. I've never written on East of Eden before. So I'm going to be actually writing one to maybe present at a conference soon. So as far as your reading responses for this week go, you guys know you can turn those in by the end of the weekend. That's fine with me. You can maybe build on something we've talked about or continue your thoughts. Kelvin's going to be presenting next week. Next week, Kelvin, you won't have to do a reading response since you're doing the presentation.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's about it for the day. So unless you guys have any other questions, I'll let you guys go for the weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
By the way, say a prayer for Bluefield State, because we are within an inch of our lives of getting unaccredited.
Pause. Because I know what that means. Because I had to talk with my high school guidance counselor before I went off to college.
Right.
Uncredited basically means, like, for example, let's say we got uncredited right now and I'm about to graduate. That meaning the degree wouldn't be worth what I did, all the work I did, right?
Now your degree would still hold weight, but new people couldn't get degree.
Yeah, basically, yep. I'm already knowing. No. I'm gonna send my prayers for y'all.
Yeah, they're going to announce the news on it at 1:30 today to the faculty.
Wow.
Yeah, but President, I'm gonna turn the recording off.
All right.